I'm ready.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Always Andy's Mom. I'm here with Gwen Capsha, the wonderful Gwen from your grief guide. And we're here to really just talk about Christmas. And, it's funny. I was texting somebody earlier today that I probably ought to apologize to Gwen because I feel like a hot mess kind of this whole Christmas season. So it's just been really tough and challenging. And I'm just going to apologize a little bit off the bat for that. But I know you understand that and you are okay with that, Gwen. So thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And Marcy, I honestly think that I've said this to you before. That's what makes what you do so real and relatable to the people because you're right there in the trenches with them. You're not acting like life is great. When they hear this and see and hear your pain, they can just connect with that so much. So I don't think you have to hide that.
Well, I'm not hiding it
That's
today.
my thought.
So
Nope.
so anyway,
Mm-mm.
we're here to kind of talk
So
about
what's brought
Christmas and
you?
Christmas time
Yeah.
and I'm just going to start out by kind of saying so anybody who's watching might notice that I'm in a different space today and I'm in Andy's room today. And it kind of started out I've been thinking about doing this for a long time, but I've never done it. But what ended up happening was I was recorded for a TV show last night in Ohio, in Northeast Ohio, and I started out. Then Eric's been putting me on this green screen, and that wasn't going to work. And so I went downstairs to our living room, and the walls are so pale that I just looked pale. It looked terrible. And so then I moved everything up to my bedroom, and that looked too dark. And then I thought, I think maybe this is the time. I think it's time to go to Andy's room and kind of honor that space a little bit. And it seemed like the appropriate place to be for that. And I thought it looked nice. And so here we are. So
Mhm.
I will show you like there's Andy's bed
Oh.
and you can see how it says Andy there.
Mhm.
And there's his baseball and his two of his
Mm.
favorite caps, his Tigers hat and Hawkeye hat that's still hanging there. If you go behind the wall, there's the calendar still turned to August of 2018. I just never thought,
Mhm.
I just never seemed right to change it. And as I turned on lights, it was like a little bit cobwebby and because of course it hadn't been turned on for a long, long time since Andy was reading back at
Mhm.
his bed. But
Mhm.
it seemed like maybe the right thing to do to be
Yeah.
here
Do you feel a little closer
in
to
this
him
space.
there? Like, is there
I I
do you
do
feel
a
a little
little bit.
closer,
I
some
do.
sense of comfort? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is
Mhm.
it sort of feels right and it's been on my mind for a long time to do it, but I knew it would be like emotionally hard for me to do it. And now of course I've moved. Now this is the new like
Mhm.
recording studio. So I had to ask my husband if he's okay because
Mhm.
he does his like basketball podcast. Like, are you okay doing the basketball podcast in Andy's room?
Mhm.
Because I think that's where I need to do my podcast now. So anyway, so I think everything's just going to be recorded here
Yeah.
now, and we'll be just moving on to this. So, um,
Yeah.
but
I
that's
love
kind of
it.
how that all started, and
It
yeah, yeah, it's been just
mm. And you've
it's been
also
just a
had the
challenge.
emotional week with the concert.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
if
as
you
long as we're
all know
talking
that.
about this week, share about the concert a little bit.
Yeah. So the last 2 weeks, of course, I have said that this live stream was going to be Tuesday night at 7 p.m. And I said it the first week, and then I didn't know at the time when I scheduled it that the concerts were happening and that this was happening. Normally, those concerts they never have them on a Tuesday night, and this year they decided to do instead of doing it over 2 weekends like they used to have probably at least 5 concerts. So 4 in Grand Rapids, 1 like in Muskegon. Occasionally they'd have 1 in Lansing. So it'd be 5 or 6 concerts. And this year they cut it down to 3 and they did it Friday, Saturday, and Tuesday. So just over a few days instead of over 2 full weekends. And I knew we would go because we always go because it makes me feel close to Andy. But what I didn't know is that they were going to be debuting the piece that was written in his honor and in his memory. So they did that. They did that Friday, and I went Friday, and I told you, because you said, "Are you sure you want to do the live stream?" Because you knew that there was going to be one on Tuesday. And I said, "Yeah, I think I should do the live stream because I think I need something to do so I don't feel obligated to go back." But then I went on Friday.
Right.
Eric also went on Saturday because Eric said, "I just feel so close to him there." He said there are so few places where I feel him, and I feel him there, which I do too. But it was just heart-wrenching. I mean, so they sang this beautiful piece, which I'll have to, once I get a clip, I have the whole concert, which is 2 hours, or an hour and a half. But once I get the clip, I'll make sure to post the clip so everyone can kind of see it. But it was a beautiful piece. It was, the words were just "be still and know that I'm God." Pretty much in English, although they sang those in Latin as well. And then part of it then did the melody of "Away in the Manger," which is, of course, the last Christmas concert that Andy sang in. He had the "Away in the Manger" solo. So it's like hearing him in a way. So those were boys singing that same solo part, but instead of the words to "Away in the Manger," they were "Be still and know that I'm God." And it was amazing. I mean, it was so, so beautiful, but just tore me up too. I mean, I think back to Cassie's daughter, who I had Cassie on the show a while back, and I actually wrote to her. She's Ella's mom. I wrote to her. She's in France. And I said, I just feel like the only words that are fitting are Ella's words, that it was excruciatingly beautiful, because it was just excruciating, but it was, I was in awe too. I mean, I really was. And, yesterday, then I as Saturday went and I didn't go, it hit me on Sunday. Like, I have to go. I have to go again. I have to hear them sing it in person again. I can't miss this. To do a live stream, I'm just going to have to change it. I just knew that that's what I needed to do. I needed to hear them sing it in person, and I sobbed the whole time again. And the people sitting next to me said after the concert, because it's at the very end, it's the last full song they sang, and they said, "Did you know him?" Because of course I'm sobbing, like, yeah, he's my son, so yeah, I more than
Did
knew
that
him.
bring tears to them? That brought tears to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard to know. I was just in such a hard place, it was just really hard. So
yeah,
and the season's been
but
hard.
those, when you said excruciatingly beautiful, bittersweet is another word that you just don't get until an experience like this, that it's got so much bitterness, but so much sweetness.
I mean, it
Of
was
where you felt
beautiful.
close and the beauty of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard because
Yeah.
sweet in some ways doesn't seem like even the right word. I was filled with awe, and it was beautiful. But sweetness always thinks of like as nice, and nothing seemed nice. I mean, it just was.
Yeah.
It was just
Right.
raw and painful, and I mean, unbelievable,
Yeah.
but hard, and and it's been a hard time anyway. So, other thing to know, a week from today, you know what I'm going to be doing right now? Getting my tattoo. So I am finally getting my tattoo,
Oh,
my Be Still tattoo, and
okay.
yeah, so I have been thinking about this for a long time. I've been talking about it on the podcast for a long time. My dear friend Michelle is going with me. And what's funny is that I scheduled it a few weeks ago, and I said to the guy, it has to be on Wednesday because that's Michelle's day off. And it has to be a Wednesday afternoon because I have the afternoon off and she has the whole day. And he said, okay, my first available is December 28th. And I said, okay. And I didn't think a lot of it. I just put it on the calendar. And it's funny, I didn't think about it at the time, but I went straight over to my friend Michelle's house and I said, okay, we have our appointment. Here's the card. You need to email him what you want to do. And then I started talking about my mom because I've been just struggling with her this year. And I don't know if that I've shared on the podcast before
Mhm.
that the day we found out she was dying was Christmas Eve. The day we moved her to hospice was Christmas Day.
Mhm.
And she died on the 28th of December.
Mhm.
And I said to Michelle, I said, the 28th
Mm.
will be the 28-year anniversary tattoo. I said, you're right. It is. And it just seemed even more like right to do it that day, that day.
Oh,
Yeah.
isn't that just amazing when things like that happen?
That it works out that way.
That's
So
incredible.
I think that's good timing. I do want to take a second here to read some of the comments.
Be?
Oh, it's on my forearm. Just so I can read it. And of course, it just says be still.
Okay.
I actually didn't want it to be like screaming out, I'm a bereaved mom. I just wanted it to be something that was really kind of special and precious to me. And, that was his favorite verse, be still and know that I'm God, which is why that's the song written and using just those words. And so anyway, that's what it will be. And it'll just be where I can look at it kind of all the time. So I do want to read a comment here that Demetra wrote. So she wrote, when we picked up Eleni's memorial bench, the guy helping to lift the bench asked me if I knew Eleni. I couldn't speak because how do you tell them that they were your whole world? And she said, I managed to say she was my daughter. And I mean, that's what I managed to say too. I mean, when that man said to me, did you know him? I mean, know him. I way more than knew him. Right?
Yeah.
I way more than knew him. So
yeah.
Anyway,
I have a question. When thinking about the holidays too and transitioning to that with all these other emotions, is this time of year harder for you to find time to recuperate from such emotions?
I would say yes. It's been really hard. And in general, I feel like in some ways I'm doing worse this year than I have. I've gotten to the point where, so every year we've decorated Andy's grave really beautifully. And I say we've, but it's never been me. It's always been that I've kind of asked someone to help me do it or to do it for me because it's just too hard for me to do. He loved decorating the house for Christmas. He just loved it. It was like, I mean, he would beg me. It would be before Thanksgiving and he'd be begging me to get out the Christmas decorations and to start decorating. So this year I had kind of said we're going to do some decorating and like nobody seemed interested in helping me at all. And I go out to the cemetery because no one's wanting to help. I go out there and of course I dig up the stuff that's there because it's all old and dead and I dig it up and I sit and I just cried with Andy. This is like right after Thanksgiving and I just cried. And I've been thinking like I need to try to decorate out there. And I came home and I didn't decorate and I felt like I couldn't because I hadn't decorated for him. I like felt like I needed to do it for him before I could do it for us. And so I just never did. I mean, I haven't had nobody offered to help me decorate his grave this year. And I just like, it's the 5th year and I just don't feel like I can ask anyone anymore. Because my therapist, like, you need to ask someone. And like, I'm just tired of asking someone. I'm tired of doing that. And I know someone would do it, but it's just getting hard. Right?
Yes.
And like the concert, like we had this concert and I posted it on Facebook that we were having the concert on the Always Andy's Mom plus in the personal stuff. And like, if you want to join me and join the family, and nobody did. And that's just hard too. Because I just feel like, you know, we're just so alone in it now. Like it used to be. Like they didn't even dedicate a song to Andy in the past, and I would have people there with me at the concert. This one was like, it was the whole page just dedicated to my boy. And yet nobody, you know, I know it's a busy time and everyone's busy, and I get that. I totally do. But it still kind of hurts, right? It still hurts. So anyway, I'm a hot mess, and I feel like I'm just feeling sorry for myself, and I don't want to do that, and I don't want to do that. I mean, I don't. But it's just tough.
It is pain. It's not. Yeah, it's not pity, Marcy, or self-pity. It is pain. So if you think about bumping yourself and, you know, hitting a tender spot and it throbs and throbs, you're in that throbbing. You're not feeling sorry for yourself. You've touched a tender spot that for a few seasons back maybe wasn't as tender, but this year it's really, really sensitive for many different reasons.
Yeah, it is.
And I
think
do
part
think
of it
when
is,
I asked about the time,
I mean, I was just going to say, I think part of it is I don't think I had fully ever dealt with all the bad stuff with my mom's death. I really hadn't. I mean, I had just stuffed it all away, and grief wasn't handled very well in my family at that time. And, you know, I never ever talk about my mom with my dad at all, because it's not an okay subject. And so I think that starts to, you know, I mean, I think that's starting to come up a little bit, because I think what I did is I just pushed it all away, and then I just had I had just had Christmas focused on my kids. Now I was just like, well, I can't focus on that. I don't want to remember that Christmas. I don't want to remember all that stuff. I'm just going to go with now and just make Christmas as beautiful for my family as I can and focus on this. And now this is all messed up and ruined too. And so, you know, then that leaves me a mess. And Demetra, I loved your comment. You're totally right. She said, we're just all so tired, love. And that's right. We're just tired. And she also wrote, people are scared to see our pain. They just want us to get over it. And I think that's it too. And probably nobody wanted to go see me sobbing at that concert, right? It's hard. It's hard to see people hurting, and it's not a time of the year that you want to be sad and thinking about all this too.
And I do think when an invite like that, like, hey, if anyone wants to join us, I've learned from other bereaved people that the assumption is that someone's going to go. Then when they learn that nobody went, they feel really badly because they made an assumption that you wouldn't be alone. But any of your friends or family hearing that you were totally alone in that are probably brokenhearted now, because they made the assumption that wasn't going to happen, but it did.
Yeah.
And it does often, because people make the assumption someone else is going to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's no way people thought nobody was going to come. And I only asked a couple of people, specific people individually. And I didn't, just because it just felt,
Mhm.
it's just getting to the point where it's hard to ask anymore. It's just hard to ask, you know? So,
Yeah. Yep.
so I know you
Mhm.
had some things that
Yep.
you wanted to make sure to talk about today.
Yeah. So let's go back to that tiredness and that
You had
in other times in our grief when we don't have all the did I freeze again? Okay.
Oh, you're good now.
Um,
Mhm.
when you don't have all the wrapping and the things to do, you can take some time after an emotional time like that. But right now, because of the season, you're just going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so it does wear us out. And I think just to take that time. So when I was thinking about today, and you and I talked about it a few, week or two ago about what do we call today. And I kind of said, maybe the pause before the clause,
Yeah.
meaning, Santa Claus coming. So I started really thinking about what taking a pause means.
Yeah.
And, you just mentioned concert, and talking about the concert before they perform, they take a pause. They do their breaths. They
Yeah.
get in the rhythm because they've practiced so much for this. So I just posted my video for this week that I put on Facebook, a little 3 or 4 minute thing. And I said, when you think about Olympics or Olympians, they prepare so much for that one moment where they're going to come out of the gate. And I was thinking of Michael Phelps because we all know him and many people have watched him. He's got his hood up, he's got his headphones in, and he's doing his weird,
Yeah.
exercises and he's breathing.
Yeah.
He is doing his last minute, whatever that pumping up or setting himself to that spot that I believe says, I've practiced, I've prepared, I know it's coming, I got to dive in. And
Yeah.
I think we as bereaved people don't realize that we have to take that same before the family comes to our house for the holidays or before we show up at their doorstep, right? And
Mhm.
how are we going to take that pause in the next few days just to go, I need to do that in order to
Yeah.
be put myself in the best position for this,
Yeah. And
if
I
that
want to
makes
bring
and it
something
doesn't
up.
have to be.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay. I
No,
was
you
going
can
to
go.
bring to a question from my little grief group that I
Mhm.
have that I thought
Yep.
would be good for discussion today. And that was about how
Mhm.
you navigate family dynamics where the love is there, but just being there
Mhm.
with full non-bereaved family members brings sadness. Just talking about they're so loving. I mean, your family loves
Mhm.
you dearly and they loved your child dearly too, but they're not living with that grief in the same way that you are, and they want to have kind of a happy Christmas moment, and one of the women in my group, her brother had invited her over for Christmas and said, "We're opening presents at this time, we're coming over." And she said, "Well, I'm just coming for dinner." And he was like upset. "No, we got you presents, you need to come."
Mhm.
And like, she doesn't want to go for presents. She didn't get anyone presents. She doesn't want to
Mm-mm.
be there for presents. Like, that's
Mhm.
too hard. And it's, the fact that she's going for dinner
Mhm.
is a really big deal and all she can do. And so,
Right.
kind of just thoughts about what you do and how you talk to
Right.
them. And she ended up sending this, I think, a beautiful, beautiful text message just explaining what she could and couldn't do. And I thought that was a great thing to just be like honest and just say, I
Mhm.
just
Right.
can't do that. And I sort of wish you didn't. I mean, I don't think she said, I wish you didn't give me presents, but I'm sure she's thinking, don't give me presents. I don't even want to get you presents. Please don't get me presents, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Right. Well, you've just said so much in all of that, so I'll kind of break it down. Let's go back to the first part of it where that person was saying, in the family, being in their presence. I think one of the things that happens when we're with family is being all together is just another reminder of our child's absence. Right?
Yeah.
It's so loud. There's this book that a man wrote after his wife died, and he talks about the empty chair when he goes out with other couples, how loud that empty chair is to him. And he said they don't hear it at the same volume level I do. So being in these family things, it's that loud emptiness that you have. But the other part is that in our grief, maybe we've learned to adjust a little bit more in our own environment, and we're kind of used to maybe having some days without our child. But then when we go to these larger gatherings, it's just again another reminder that they're not there. And the other piece is that we see our family's grief too, and then we're carrying that I'm sad and lonely, but like you mentioned, everyone else is having joy. I don't want to tell them that I'm sad and lonely.
Right.
So it just makes for a whole, pot full of a bunch of highly charged emotional stuff. So then that leads to what you were saying about the person who told her brother, I can't do that. We go back to those are the best tips in letting people know what we can and can't handle, and just saying I can't be there. And we're not expecting family to fully understand that. They just can't understand it all, but can they accept it? But I also think that, again, when we're with family, we realize that it might have to be smaller chunks.
Yeah.
Because it's just so heavy for you. And it used to be that maybe you could spend hours with family, but if there's so much emotion in that for you, it's too hard to carry for that long. So I think doing it in little pieces and just staying for the, like she said, I'll come for the dinner. And I think someone else here said, I can't even look at a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
We need to protect ourselves however possible. I mean, so true. That it's just too much right now. And so setting
you're right
those
that
things up.
they may not understand, and we just are going to have to kind of be okay with them not understanding. And it's just hard because I know everyone feels like they're judged. I mean,
right.
I have gotten so much just from my little grief group. I feel like so many of those women in there have talked about really how they're feeling judged by their families on what they can and can't do this Christmas season, and what they can and can't participate in. It's just such a shame that
makes me so sad.
Yeah. But it's definitely true. I mean, it's definitely true.
Why is it that the holidays have such expectations, and families do in a sense, even outside of the holidays, has expectations of how, we're supposed to feel or be or want to be together. But sometimes those are the hardest places for hurting people to be. And you just mentioned a couple times your grief group, and Candy, said your Starlight group would have been there if we could have teleported. This is the hard part, is because where you and all these other moms and parents feel safe is with a group of other bereaved parents.
I know.
And that's hard for family to realize that it's not the same.
And that is kind of the little bit of the downside that my Starlight family is virtual. I mean, I love the fact that they're virtual in some ways, because I love that I have people from all over the country and even abroad now in our same little group. It's fantastic. And what's funny is I feel closer to them than any of my friends here. Any of them. I feel closer to these women. And actually Demetra too. So I'm going to give you a shout out too, honey, because I feel closer to you than anyone here. And she was one to say to me, I would have been there. But she can't just come from Toronto, drop and go to a concert and some evening. But that is the thing, that who I feel close to now, and who would drop everything and do that for me. They can't, because they're not close enough to be able to do that for me. And I know they would have.
Mhm.
if they were there. And so I guess I
Mhm.
have to kind of, grasp onto that a little bit and just know that I have my tribe. In some ways,
Mhm.
your tribe isn't close enough maybe for you to see them in person, but they're there.
Mhm.
They're there. Mhm.
And even if your tribe, I understand for the concert they would have been there, but if people have a tribe that's close to them geographically, your tribe doesn't go to your family gatherings, right? You
No,
can't bring them
no, they
with you.
don't.
That's
No,
not a place that they
no.
normally go. So we do go some places totally alone.
Yeah.
And I think that's why before we go, we have to prep ourselves to say,
Yeah.
how am I going to do this? And when I was thinking about the Olympics in that comparison, there's no medal at the end. There's no platform people are going to put you on and play your national anthem and go, wow, you survived a really hard afternoon at Lucy's house. No
Yeah.
one does
Yeah. No
that.
one's going to do that.
And that's why it's so hard
No.
because even after we survive, the hardest thing, maybe we've held our breath for 3 hours just trying to make it through. Nobody puts you on a platform. So you almost have to reach back and go, to yourself that, hey, I accomplished something.
Yeah. Yeah.
I survived. I didn't stab anyone with a fork or, flip over a table. Now, maybe some families that happens. I don't know. But so
Yeah.
we have to almost realize that at the end, we have to celebrate the fact that we just did something really big.
And I love that. I'm going to take that back to my own little group because we have a little text thread going. And just to say, what can we celebrate today? What
Mhm.
did you get through today? At the end of this
Yes,
all, and
right.
just
Yeah, for
do that and
sure.
take that minute because we will honor that in each other. There's no question we will. Just as
Right.
those women
Yeah,
would have been there at that
exactly.
concert had we
And
been
that's
able
what
to be.
right. Right, and that's always what I do, and you know this about me in teaching about facilitating support groups, is you always start with what was harder, like we just
Yeah.
did. Like, what are some of the hard things we're struggling through? But then we end on, the positive, and some of the positive is not is the survivalship,
Yeah.
or that there might have been a moment that surprised us that had joy in it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Absolutely.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so there are a few other things that I wanted to bring up too, and that I've been
Yeah.
having wonderful people write to me. It's great. So the last 2 weeks I've been saying I really need to get people kind of signed up to do some episodes because I didn't really have anything planned, and it's been wonderful. I've had really
Mhm.
wonderful response, and now I'm kind of booked out through February, and so that's
Mm.
great. But I've also had
Mhm.
people just reaching out who are struggling and want to know kind of what to do. And I've had some people asking Gwen about seeing you and about how
Mhm.
they could hear more from you.
Yes.
And
Oh.
I have not
Mhm.
brought this up in a very long time, but obviously Gwen has a business, your grief guide, and she's got this beautiful, amazing set of videos. And then after you watch those videos, you can end up booking some like appointments, right, Gwen, after the videos that you can do some
Yep.
things
Mhm.
too.
And
So, but just to
true.
remind
And
all
when
of
I
you,
first started
I
it
have coupons. I have coupons. You can do the Gwen videos for free. Just email me and I will send you a
Mhm.
coupon that you can do this because I think Gwen is unbelievable. And honey, I tell you, I wouldn't be where I
Mm.
am today if not for you. And I just
Mm.
announced that I was a hot
Aw.
mess, so maybe I shouldn't say that in the same podcast because now, but really you have helped me so
That's sweet.
much, and I know that video series on top of what we talk about
Mhm.
in our kind of every 6 weeks or so episodes we do.
Mhm.
You do a lot in that video series and it is
Yeah.
really amazing. And please just
Mm.
email me at marcyandandysmom.com and I will get you a coupon code. And if you feel like financially you just want to pay
Right.
for it and not use my coupon, that's fine. Go on Grief Guide. It's grief-guide.com, right,
Yeah.
Gwen? and find out more about Gwen
Right,
there.
correct.
Yeah, because
Yes, and
yeah. Go ahead,
mhm.
sorry.
So you have generously, purchased them to give to your listeners, and that just has shown how much you care about them. And they're part of the video that I never imagined when we did it, is that people would re-listen. And it's interesting because maybe, I talked about preparing ourselves, right? I have some people say to me right before the holidays, I re-listened to this part, because that's part of their pump up. It's part of what they play in their head. So they know they're not alone. They know they're not going crazy. They can have that playing. So
Yeah.
the part about the code, that when you listen to the videos, is it doesn't expire. You can re-listen. It's not a one time you listen to it and you only get one download. It's available. So along with that, there's just instructions on how to log on. The other part is that some of your listeners who are saying, I don't have my tribe, or maybe I want to start a tribe, is that there's discussion questions, and you can listen to it with someone else and then have, discussions together, and there's extra reading. The other part that
Well,
I
and
do
I
wanna say
recently
is that,
I
go
was just
ahead.
going to say recently someone reached out to me and had said that her friend who had emailed me in the past had said, "Do you think Gwen would be willing to talk to me?" And she wrote back, "Well, I
Mhm,
don't think so. I mean, I don't think so, but I don't know for
mhm,
sure." And so she asked me, and I was like,
mhm.
let me get the video, let me get the videos to her. Absolutely, we can get that ball
Yeah,
rolling, because I do think people think somehow they didn't know this. And I feel like that's our own fault that we've not made that clear enough, too.
mhm,
And I also don't feel like I've made it clear enough
right.
that the Starlight
But
support groups that we do through Starlight Ministries, so go on their website, starlightmen.org,
mhm,
those are free. And I don't think I've been clear enough about that either,
right, right.
because I've had people call to Starlight because they're going to do it, and then they ask, "Well, how much is this going to cost?" Like, "Oh, it doesn't cost anything." I mean,
Right,
that's the
right.
beautiful thing, because they're
Mhm,
a charitable organization
right.
and they do fundraising, and and then that leads me into my next thing, because I am terrible.
Wait, couldn't
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
I just wanna address one other thing when you said about people talking with me. When I first started my business, I thought that I wanted people to for sure watch the videos before they talked with me, right?
Hmm.
But I have found that some people just wanna talk to
Okay.
me, and so it's not a requirement that they see the videos first. Now I have 3 sessions. They're purposeful. One is a chance for people to tell me about their wound, more about their story, their specifics. The second part is, that they can the second visit is we talk about the work of grief, the feelings where they might be stuck, guilt, anger, depression. What are some of the things that are obstacles for us? Then the third one is I wonder what's next for me. I wonder how, um, you know, I how I'm gonna make it through this.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
will give those at a 50% discount to any of your people. So I want them to know that don't buy them online, because they'll pay 50% more. So all they have to do is email me, and I'll put my email in here again, and email me, and I will make sure that we can set that up, and it can be done virtually, and it's done, what works best for them.
Yeah.
So those 3 sessions are available for people.
Yeah. Well, you are a
So, okay,
blessing
so you were
to
gonna
so
go on to
many.
something
So
else, you said.
so I was going to transition a
Oh,
little
thank
bit,
you.
because again, so we're talking about trying to help people and do services for people. And so the Always Andy's Mom
Mhm,
is a 501c3. So if you have end of year giving that you would like to do, it would be great if you donated
mm,
to our organization. I mean, you know,
mhm,
when we do these the podcast, it costs me, just to so you all know, cost me about $500 a month to put these out. And for the most part, I just do that with my money. We've got some
wow,
Patreon subscribers, but I think I get $22 a month from that. And we get some occasional donations, which are fantastic. And I think I should do a better job at thanking people, maybe personally on the podcast for making a donation, because
Mhm.
I think, that could be helpful. But I never ask, and just because it makes me feel awkward, but I do feel like if I did ask and I got some more donations, well, then I might be able to buy more coupon codes and do more of that other stuff, because instead
Mhm.
I feel like I've got to spend $6,000 just to produce the podcast a year, right? And so it
Mhm.
limits being able to do maybe some other things to be able to help, maybe some individual moms or individual people, and buy the codes and get them some
Mhm.
help, because I really would like to not
Yeah.
limit things to just producing the podcast. And that's what, in some ways, I feel like I'm doing. So anyway, if you want to, you can go on givebutter.com and give that way. There are some instructions on the beginning and the end of the podcast about that, but if you want to, I would appreciate it. Obviously, going to the andysmom.com website, there's a donate page too that you can go to that, and anything would be really
Okay.
appreciated. Mhm. So,
Right. And
and
it
that's
is
so that
so
I can
hard to
continue
ask,
helping
right?
people.
It
Oh
is
yeah,
because
it's terrible.
right. And that your motive, the reason that you don't ask a lot is because you're more thinking about why you're doing this. You're doing this to
Yeah.
help people. And so the money part is back here, but then there are times that we do have to bring the money part to the front to say, and just make people aware. And if people don't know,
Well, I
right?
don't think people think about the fact
So
that,
I'm glad that you
that
said
I'm
no,
spending this
I don't
money.
think
And
so.
I mean, I'm happy to do it and we'll keep doing it.
Mhm.
There's no question about it. But recently, I just have had some moms that have had some kind of financial struggles. And I feel like, oh, it would be nice to be able to help them out with a few kind of things like this.
Right.
But, I don't want it to get way outside of my Always Annie's Mom budget, which is not,
Mhm.
very vast.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, interesting. When you and Eric and I first started talking about the podcast, and I asked, like, how do other podcasts make money? Well, they have advertisers. Well, who
well,
wants to advertise on a bereaved mom's podcast? Like,
honestly, people
who's
do.
going to do
I have
that? I
had
mean,
people reaching out. I have had people reaching out
really?
recently, like, because the listenership has gone up. So I have more people reaching out. But there are people reaching out to be like, how to make money, capitalist, whatever. Or they're all this like
Right.
weird things that have nothing to do with anything that I'm doing. And that feels weird to me. So I
Exactly.
have had, in the past probably
Right.
2 or 3 weeks, I've had 3 different advertisers reach out that want to advertise. And that feels ickier to me than asking for donations, honestly. Like, I don't want
Yes.
people to listen through
Right.
commercials on how to make a secure financial future.
Right.
I don't. I mean, I had one early on that
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
an online therapy, and I thought about that a little bit, but then again I thought, well, what if they're bad? What if they're a bad therapist? Like, I don't want to
Right.
be promoting a bad
Right.
therapist.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
that was the one that was the closest
Mhm.
fit for sure. But again, it
Right.
felt
Right.
just kind of odd. And so I didn't want to do that. And so I'm glad you brought up the advertising thing, because I was
Yeah.
going to make sure to mention
Yeah.
that. Like, I just don't want to advertise. And that's what other
Mhm.
podcasts do. My husband, I told, has this basketball podcast. He's got like tons of advertising now. And some of the people that have reached out to me to advertise, I've said to him, like, maybe they would advertise on yours, because I just don't feel good about it. It just
Right.
feels wrong. Yeah.
I totally get that. I totally do.
Well, other things that you wanted to make sure you kind of
Well,
talked about before Christmas here.
I don't think I think I just really wanted to have the listeners, like, just thinking about the fact that you're going into a battle, and how are you going to prepare, and just making sure that you take some time to pause and realize that this is this is a tough season. And I know you know that, but I think sometimes people think that they just go with the flow and hope it all turns out. But what I want them to do is realize that they can do some things to help themselves, like taking that pause and setting yourself in the right mind frame of, I've prepared. I've told my family what I can handle. I'm going to have a backup plan. If it gets to be too much, I'm leaving. All those things that we talked about a few weeks ago, I'm getting through the holidays. And many of your listeners have listened to Getting Through the Holidays. So a lot of those things aren't, extraordinarily new tips. But what I just wanted to focus on is that pause before you go into this week.
Yeah, just taking a breath,
Yeah.
taking a minute.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, listening. Well, it's interesting because when I say that, and I talked about, I wonder what Michael Phelps listened to, and I'm sure if we Googled it, he's probably told someone what he listens to. But what is your pump up song? Like sometimes we do have to pump ourselves up, and what is it? And like I said before, family isn't always the easiest. So sometimes even before the death happened, we had to pump ourselves up to go be
Yeah.
around family. And
Mhm.
now it's even more so. So what is your walk up song as you're walking up to that house carrying your green bean casserole,
I
right?
can tell you it's not gonna be the song that they just sang for Andy. That's not gonna
No,
be my
no,
walk-up
no,
song.
no, not at
It is
all.
it is moving and beautiful, but it is
Mhm.
not gonna be my walk-up
No,
song for sure. I'm
that's
gonna see if I can get that in a little clip here
that'd
in the
be
next few
wonderful.
hours. I might see if I can put it on the end of this
Mhm.
one today when the podcast goes out Thursday, just so people can kind of get a listen and
Yeah,
be able to really appreciate that song because
yeah,
I mean, that's the thing in some ways. All of you listeners, you're my tribe.
right,
You're my tribe.
right.
And
Yeah.
I know that you will appreciate hearing a song about my boy,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. It was amazing. And the reason they did it too is because the conductor of the choir this weekend wrote the song. So he
Oh,
wrote it.
wow.
He also happened to be the director that was there for the late spring, early summer concert in June 2018. And it's very funny because Andy, normally they're done at the end of 8th grade. They are done. And they give them little kind of mementos for finishing. And Andy thought he was done. And so he thought it was the last concert that he was going to sing. And it was such a huge part of his life. And I'm watching him and I'm recording him and I'm like in about the third row and I'm tearing up. And I look at Andy and he's tearing up and getting
Mm,
emotional. And he had to leave. He
mm,
left and walked out the side and went in this side little vestibule of the church, of the cathedral, and he was crying
mm,
because he was so sad it could be the last one. And then they had the offertory where they were just collecting the offering, and this conductor who ended up writing the song for him went to check on him. And Andy's there crying that it was his last concert and it was meaning a lot to him. And, Mr. Webster gave him his handkerchief that he had, which we still have. I can actually look over on his desk and the
mm,
handkerchief is still sitting over there. And what's funny is then I came to check on them and Peter came. Peter came
mm,
out because Peter, of course, was standing right next to him in that
mhm,
concert. And he started crying because Andy was
mm,
crying. And it was the last, thinking it was the last one they were doing together. Um, And after the offertory, they all got back up and Mr. Webster directed him again. But I think it was, for him finding out that Andy had died, that boy who that music meant so much to him that he was
mhm,
crying.
mhm.
That's I think why he felt so called to write a song about him. And
Yeah.
it turns out what's funny is that after that concert series, Andy's voice wasn't changing yet. He was going into the ninth grade, but he
Mhm,
really wasn't changing. And Mr. Boscher asked him if he would be willing to stay on at least for the fall semester through the Christmas concert, just to kind of help those younger boys, help the choir, and be kind of a leader. And he could still sing it, right? And so, what's funny is those tears were sort of, in some ways, for nothing
Mhm,
because he was going to sing again. But of
mhm.
course he didn't because he died just 2 months later. So
Yeah, yeah,
anyway, but that's why, just to give you a little more background as to why Richard Webster felt so called to write this piece for him. It's because, he wasn't just another one of the boys to him.
right.
They had a pretty special connection, the two of them. So,
Yes, that's beautiful. We love the backstory, and I agree, we are gonna love it, and it's going to be beautiful.
oh. So
Yeah,
somebody wrote here,
right.
did you see that? The
I
Kleenex
did.
or tissue manufacturers as related sponsors.
I had never
That's
thought of
good.
that. Good idea, Lynn. Yeah.
Let's go
Um,
with that, Lynn. I'll
mhm,
contact Kleenex and Puffs tomorrow and see
yeah.
if they want to advertise a commercial.
Yeah. Or maybe even a tattoo artist because, that whole thought when you were talking about
A tattoo artist.
yeah,
Maybe
um,
my tattoo artist wants to do that.
there's that woman who wrote the book Grace and Gratitude. She was a speaker once at our bereaved moms retreat. I can't think of her name. I think her last name's Ramsey. Can you
Yeah, I
help?
don't know.
Did you meet her? Anyway, she's a bereaved mom and she's written a book and she said something along the lines of nothing sends a middle-aged woman to a tattoo parlor faster than the death of a child.
Do you know you told me that on the very
Yeah.
first day we met? On the
Oh,
very
really?
first day we met, you told me that. Because I
Wow.
had said something, I don't know, and you said that
Yeah.
comment, and of course, I think Eric was like, "Yeah, no."
No. And here you are
And
going
here
to
I
that
am,
one. Yep.
now 4.5 years later, finally doing the
Mhm.
tattoo. But I
Yeah.
do think it's beautiful. I'm I'm looking forward to doing that. I think I
Mhm.
need to do that for me, for sure.
Mhm. Mhm. And I
Yeah.
love what you said. It's interesting because I don't have tattoos. People say they're very personal for them, and that's exactly what you just described, that it was for you, that where you can see it and the meaning for you, not for others.
Not for other people, right?
Yeah.
Because other people put, sometimes they have their child name, which I think is fine, or
Mhm.
their birth date and death date and things like that. I definitely didn't want the death date because I just didn't want to be
Right.
staring at the worst day of my life. I mean, just
Mhm.
to have to stare at that just seemed like something I definitely didn't want to do. Um, and I just wanted it to be for me. I really did.
Mhm.
I feel like the more I just put, those are words that we spoke all the time. I mean, all the
Mhm.
time.
Yeah.
He would get upset, he would get nervous, anxious about something. I would say, "Andy, say your Bible verse." And we would together say, "Be still and know that
Mhm.
I am God." Like,
Yeah.
we would just say that. It's what got him to a moment of peace, is if he would say that and he would breathe that, he would breathe those words, and
Mhm.
we would get to the end and he would always feel better. And I just need a reminder to myself,
Mhm.
because especially like now, like I
Mhm.
told you, how many times have I said that in this last hour that I'm a hot mess? But what I need to do is I need to look at that and remind myself to
To
just
be
be
still.
still,
Mhm. Yeah.
to be still, and not worry about being a hot mess for just a minute, but to just be
No.
still. And
No.
nothing else matters. And it doesn't matter if people are judging me, and it doesn't matter.
Right.
All of that stuff doesn't matter. What matters is me taking a
Right.
minute, a little pause, and being still.
Well, it's a natural response. You started this episode by apologizing for your hot mess. And how many times have you heard me say, and you being a physician, do people come into your office and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I have a sore throat"? No, they don't. Do they ever say, "Oops, I broke my leg. I know. I'm sorry if that." They
You
don't.
know what? You would not believe, but I do they come in and they say, "I'm so sorry to be wasting your time, but I really
Oh,
want her ears checked," or whatever. So, I actually do get
the
apologies from
okay,
moms all the time. Or I check
the
their
mom,
ears
but
and
the
they're fine,
patient.
and they're like, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Like,
Yeah,
don't
but
apologize. Don't
that's from the
apologize. But
moms.
that is what I say. I say, "Don't apologize,"
Right.
right? I say, "I can't know that there's an ear infection or not unless I look."
We
I
look.
can't, right.
But I also think that's coming from the mom and them apologizing, but the patient themselves, when they're in need of care, they don't
Yeah.
apologize, they need it. If you're really sick and your leg's broken, you don't go to the ER and go, "I'm so sorry." You're like, "Help me." So
Yeah.
today, for you to be emotionally needing an ER and needing some triage and some comfort and some care, just know that you found it here. Look at the comments. This is a safe place for you to do that.
Yeah.
So we don't have to apologize for that. We're absolutely normal. What other response would you expect from the season, the concert, the things that you are going through, the reminders and working with your mom's death and all of that? What other response would people expect from you?
Yeah. Well, Candace just wrote this comment here. We apologize because we feel like we are passing the grief on to others as well. And that's definitely true.
Yeah, that can happen. I see that part. Like, I'm sorry if this upsets you.
Well, and you know what's funny? And I feel like this was God ordained. So I worked our walk-in clinic today and it's been super busy and we've been seeing tons of kids. And
Right.
I walked in and I saw a girl and I didn't recognize the mom right away, but I had been in a bereaved group with her in the past.
Oh,
In a
really?
bereaved moms group. And she said, like, sort of towards the end of the visit, after I kind of diagnosed her daughter, she said, I'm so and so's mom.
Oh.
And I said, oh. And so we talked a little bit.
Mhm.
And what's funny is I mentioned the concert, which she had known about because she follows me on Facebook and knew about the concert. And I said, you know, how hard that was. And she was talking about just being a hard time of year and all that. And then she later sent me an apology. I'm sorry if I got you upset today. And I was like, I said, you don't understand what you did for me.
Mhm.
You were the perfect person to see me because
Mhm.
no one, I've been able to talk to no one in
Right.
person about how that concert affected me and how that
Right.
was. I mean, only Eric, who was there with
Mhm.
me. But
Mhm.
otherwise, I hadn't said a thing to anybody because nobody wants to know, to be honest. They don't.
Mhm.
And for me to be able to take a minute and share that with her and share a moment with another bereaved mom who would know how hard that was for me
Mhm.
and not just talk about how beautiful it was or not talk about it at all, frankly, is what most people
Mhm.
do. I mean, it was a gift. It was a
Mhm.
real gift.
Yeah. That's beautiful, and how those things happen, and those are the kind of moments that I when I talk to our listeners about grabbing some of those moments, maybe it's moments like that that someone comes into your path and you can talk to and relate with. I do have to go back to the tattoo thing though, thinking of one of your people that was on your podcast, Lisa, she's Jordan's mom.
Uh-huh.
She had Jordan's handwriting of his initials, and she
Yeah.
has his initials on her finger, on her ring finger, and that was a very unique, beautiful tattoo of having his initials on her finger
Yeah.
in his handwriting. I thought that was pretty beautiful, and I love when I see her, my eyes are always drawn to that ring finger to see that.
Oh, yeah, that is beautiful. That
Mhm.
is beautiful. And again, something just so meaningful to her.
To her, yeah.
Yeah.
But now she's my friend. It's such a part of her that it's just, I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we probably ought to wrap up
We
here,
should.
especially if I'm going to try to put that song on the end. So we
Right.
will see. But thank you so much for joining us
Thank
today. And thank you, Gwen, for
You're
being
welcome.
amazing and making me feel just a little bit better today
Yeah.
because you certainly did.
Well, thank you. We just want everyone to be encouraged and to, if they need someone to be at the end saying, great job, you did it, reach out, let us know. Both of us would love to hear from you so that we can
Yeah.
say, here's your medal.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mhm.
Absolutely. I would love to do that. I would love it.
Mhm. Yep.